March, April, May, June, July, all of them are Women's History Month, as you must know. And I have a historian and an activist with me today, one that we're all proud of. Back on The Bernie Hayes Show. And my guest today is someone I described as someone I love and someone I've supported for many, many years and who have supported me over the years, Jamala Rogers. Jamala, welcome back.
Good morning. How are you?
Fine. You've been traveling again as usual. You've been really doing a whirlwind, haven't you?
Well, not too much. I've been trying to really focus on the Organization for Black Struggle as its executive director, and so that's pretty time consuming. But I try to keep a national perspective and see what's going on in the world around me and how OBS fits into that picture.
You've been on a book tour recently.
I really haven't.
No.
That's pretty much been in the back burner. But interesting, Bernie, there has been an increase in sales of Ferguson is America.
Yeah.
And so I thought that was interesting because this is the 5th anniversary of the Ferguson uprising. So I suspect that there'll be some invitations to talk about that.
For those who don't know, tell them about the book, the latest book.
So the book, Ferguson is America, is really about 4 years old now, but it was an attempt to explain and detail the history leading up to the Ferguson uprising. So there were a lot of questions at that time by media and people around the country. Why Ferguson? They had never heard of a Ferguson. And so for the sake of young people coming behind me, I thought it was really important to be a student of history, because really you have to do that if you want to be an organizer, to talk about the conditions that led up to a Ferguson. And so the book does that. I mean, it goes back really 40 years up into Ferguson to talk about what was happening in the county, how you got 91 municipalities, the racism, the police brutality and police terror, folks coming into the county, North County in particular. So all of that were ingredients for a combustion that was inevitable.
A lot of research on that.
Yeah.
On this you did. You're an author of 2 books that I know of, and then you still write every week for the St. Louis American newspaper. What's the focus of your columns, Jamala?
So it's interesting that you asked that, Bernie, because this is the 25th anniversary of me writing for the St. Louis America, and one of the things I said I would do is like every month go back down memory lane and talk about pieces of that writing. And the last one, which will be coming out soon, is what is the thinking that goes into what I pick. Okay. And so what the topics are that I pick. And so I just want to share that with readers, because I get so many questions about that. Like, how do you pick that? Yeah. What makes you pick that over something else? And so it's always a struggle to narrow it down. Not that it's nothing to write about, because I said as long as I'm black, female, and living in America, I'm going to have something to write about.
Yeah, there'll always be something.
Yes.
Well, what is it like being a black female in America today, Jamala?
Well, obviously it's easier than when my mom was coming of age, but I think, there's been so much study of racism and capitalism and feminism. And so I think for the millennials who came up at a time when those issues and those manifestations were being defined, they are more attuned to what that looks like for them, and as a result of that, more in tune to fighting against it. And so there's spaces that, some of that chauvinism and sexism just is hard to exist, because women are going to call folks out on it, and so that's a good thing. But I think, for example, I'll just give an example of somebody like Kim Gardner, our first African American prosecutor.
Attorney, yeah.
Like some of the things that are happening to Kim have never happened to her previous
Certainly.
white or male or female.
Right.
And so you do become a target when you are vocal and when you stand your ground and when you carry out the people's agenda. So I think that part makes it particularly hard. But for me, one of the things I, was told by my elders is that you always want to be a part of the community. You always want to be a part of an organized community, because that is the thing that helps to, buffer you from the attacks. And I think for me, that's certainly been the case. That doesn't mean I don't get the arrows,
sure,
but it just means that there's going to be other people around to say, hey, I support what she says, and I agree with what she says, and here's why. So I try to be on point with what I'm saying. I try to be connected to the community, and their voices are coming through me. So in many ways, I think I don't get a lot of the backlash that comes from being a black woman individually. Sure. I certainly get it institutionally, but I think folks then begin to pick and choose who their targets are going to be.
But they know who you are, some of them. A lot of folks forget that you're an educator, too. You were trained as an educator.
Yeah. And, that's still part of what I do. I'm always educating people and agitating and informing. And so I think that's the piece that I really like about writing, because you are educating, agitating, and informing. And one of the last things that I said in my column is I really like writing, and I want people to know what I think about a particular thing. But more importantly, I want to know what the readers think about that particular issue. So it's an exchange that sometimes doesn't always happen through the folks responding to the article online or in a letter. But when I'm out and about, like, people will say, "Yeah, I read your article," and then we have a conversation. So it's always engaging.
You took a hiatus there from the Organization for Black Struggle as director, but now you're back. What's your mission? What is the OBS mission to the state?
Mission is still the same. I mean, I took a hiatus to let new leadership come forward. But that I'm a founding member, so it's not. It's my baby till I die.
Right.
But I think that our mission is still being on the front line, working for working class Black people. The issues that affect us every day: the criminal justice system, health care, all workers' rights. All of those are issues that we still are fighting for.
We have goals and objectives. Is there any particular goal or objective that you're looking at right now?
I don't know if it's necessarily a goal. We certainly have a few campaigns going on right now.
So such as?
One of them is that's really a unnecessary campaign as far as I'm concerned. It's called the Defend the Win. And the win meaning in November, voters in Missouri, and particularly the St. Louis area, overwhelmingly voted for Prop B, which was to increase the minimum wage, and Amendment 1, which is to clean up Missouri politics. And so now you have a Republican legislator trying to overturn those things. And so now the campaign is we have to defend what we just fought for, what we just won. And so there's some efforts for people to contact their legislators on the state level to say, hey, this is what we voted for, this is what we believe, this is what we want. So we've been having meetings, there's been mailers, there's been town halls, getting people to actually go to Jeff City for some of these bills that would either undercut or completely overturn those two things. And my particular view is that this is a trend that's going on where as people start to win and they start to be more impactful, that the rules of the game change. Yeah. So that's part of the struggle. So all along the way, you're actually trying to educate people about the system that we're in and how it's going to change and morph. And so just because you get that win, you can't go back into the woodwork.
The win means WIN. Okay. How can we reach you, Jamala Rogers?
So the Organization for Black Struggle, our phone number is 314-367-5959. And you can reach us on the website at www.obs-stl.org, the number that's on your screen. So.
Okay. 367-5959, 367-5959. Jamala Rogers is my guest. Jamala's been visiting with us many, many times over the years. And she's always supported the New Life Evangelistic Center. She's always supported Larry Rice. She marched with the New Life Evangelistic Center. She was at the hearings, when this turmoil was closing 1411 Locust Street. And Jamala, since you know so much about it, you still may not know all of the details. Reverend Larry Rice asked me to give you this. Through the fire, how St. Louis gentrifiers tried to destroy a church because of its homeless congregation. This is from you, from Reverend Larry Rice personally.
I appreciate that.
And you may also, Reverend Larry Rice wants all of you to get a mug to support the New Life Evangelistic Center and the Bernie Hayes Show. And here he is to tell you about it, how to get one.
For many years, Bernie Hayes has been on the front lines leading the charge for social justice. It's been a great privilege of mine to get to know Bernie personally. And I want us, in celebration of all that Bernie has done, to share with you one of these very special Bernie Hayes mugs and a copy of a book, Through the Fires, which tells you about the battle for social justice at 1411 Locust, where gentrifiers came into the neighborhood and literally shut down the church at the New Life Evangelistic Center at 1411 Locust Street because they didn't want those kind of people in the neighborhood. Direct bigotry. Now, if you'll request this mug and share a gift of $25 or more, we'll send you this book, 328 pages that go into great detail on all the manipulating behind the scenes and on the scenes that took place in order for the city of St. Louis to consider it a nuisance because there were hurting and homeless people in the neighborhood. We would love to see a beloved community that when development takes place in a community, instead of the poor and the elderly and the homeless being pushed out, it's a beloved community that welcomes people from all over, regardless of their racial background or who they might be. They're people made in the image of God. Bernie Hayes has fought for that for years. And now we're teaming up with Bernie in a very special and powerful way. If you'll just call in our 421-302, or you can send your special gift and just say, please send me the Bernie Hayes mug. We will include in that Through the Fire, historical book that I've written on how the St. Louis gentrifiers tried to destroy a church because of its homeless congregations. There's a common saying that if your neighbor's house on fire, yours in danger also. The bigotry, the hypocrisy in the city of St. Louis affects all of us. I thank God for Bernie, who has continued to point it out and root it out. Now we're teaming up with Bernie. When you request the Bernie Hayes mug and share a gift of $25 or more to New Life Evangelistic Center, I'll include my book, Through the Fire. We'd love to hear from you. Share now. P.O. Box 473, St. Louis, Missouri.
Welcome back. My guest is Jamala Rogers. She's now heading again the Organization for Black Struggle, but she's involved in so many other organizations too. Jamala, being the activist that you are, what about this new city-county merger that they're talking about, this Together Forever?
Together Forever. Huh?
Yeah, that's what it seems like.
Better together.
Better together, but it's Together Forever. That's what they want.
Yeah.
So what's your take on that?
So almost immediately, just based on the fact that Rex Singfield is the financier of it, you red flags start going off. But I think when you actually start to look at the language, which has been changed at least 3 times, Bernie, because it seems like it was, we know it's a power grab, it's a white power grab, but you would have thought that folks would have been more mindful about the process. And so from the very beginning, there's been opposition, and for good reason. I mean, I think that initially when folks in the city saw that there was going to be a merger, basically the city was going to be a stepchild because there was not even going to be a co-mayor structure. We're like, okay, where do we fit in here? And it basically is like we would just be swallowed up.
Right.
Cities.
Steve Stinger would run it.
Yeah, and so we're like, no, that's not going to work. But then as people start to really look into the various facets of it, then you see it's problematic all along the line. And I think one of the things that's most problematic is that there's not been an engagement of the folks whose lives are going to be affected by this to see what's possible. So I think most people think that 91 municipalities is foolish. It may be not a good use of taxpayers' resources, but then let's talk about that.
Sure.
One of the demands that came out of the Ferguson uprising is that these court municipalities need to be consolidated so that, when you go through a 5-mile stretch and you hit like 10 municipalities and you get the same ticket for the tail light that's been out. Right. So folks were like, okay, we could see how that could happen because you get one ticket and then you go to one court as opposed to 5.
Because while blank is still an issue.
So I think there's some understanding that there could be some streamlining of different services, but let's have a discussion about what that would look like. I think we should have something like a 30-year plan to see how we consolidate it. But one of the interesting things that is, I've been talking about this in the community, folks said, hey, how about we start with consolidating the county first? See how that works before you add St. Louis City. And to me, that's certainly an alternative because you just can't start and envelop the whole 91 municipalities and reduce all of the power and resources going to the city. I mean, it's just a recipe for disaster, not to mention all of the racial inequity that's going to be embedded in that. So it's problematic from all angles. And I think we definitely on our stand is to be in opposition to it. And so yeah, it's a white power grab.
You didn't get enough attention or credit for organizing the minimum wage, to boosting the minimum wage for people not only in Syria but all around the country. So what's the status of that, Jamala, and is it going to last? Are they trying to repeal it or what?
Yeah, that's part of the Defend the Win.
Yeah.
The Prop B, which was increasing the minimum wage, actually is a response to a win that we had before in the city. If you recall, we fought for it for the city and we won, and then the next year the state legislature said, oh no, St. Louis can't do that. And they took it back, and then we moved to a ballot initiative, to say, okay, this is enough, and the people will speak, and the people did speak. The majority of folks around the state across party lines voted yes to increase the minimum wage. And although it's going to be raised in increments up to 2023 or whatever, it still represented a victory for the people. And so it's such small increments, but yet that's still enough for folks to say, squash it. Yeah. So I think people need to be aware of that, in November, they passed two bills that were really important, and that was Amendment 1 to get, big money out of politics to reduce the lobbying efforts and to come up with a fair and equitable redistricting map for the state. So there was definitely some thought going into that, and so we're going to fight to make sure that the people's voices and their votes were heard and are heard.
For those who've been following Jamala Rogers, know your involvement with the Maryland Bank situation, Ellen Reasonover, and now Reggie Clemens. So for those who did not understand what Reggie did and why he did it, could you kind of give us an explanation
on
Reggie Clemens?
That's a whole show really, because it's a case that went nearly 26 years. Sure. But I think that basically when the fight ended up with fighting for the new trial, and as that proceeded, it was clear that even though we thought we were going to be under Kim Gardner's admin, it ended up the state took it over. That's how serious these folks are about prosecuting, and the death penalty was still going to be on the table. So at that 11th hour, Reggie and his parents decided for him to take a plea, and so that's what he did. And so he's really been. It was
to save his life.
To save his life,
sure.
And also, because again, the death penalty was not taken off the table, and that would have been a whole nother fight for another X number of years.
10, 20 years.
Longer than that. And so, I'm always one to say, fight to the end. But that was a decision that he had to make, and so I respect that and I support that. So he's doing well, all things considered. He has some parole hearings coming up. So he's been, fighting. One of the things he really wants to do is to take the judgment that he was beaten into a confession.
Sure.
He wants to pursue that particular aspect of it and file suit. And so he really wants to be able to any proceeds that come from that lawsuit to give to the family of the Carey sisters. So we're still on that journey with him.
Yeah.
We're in constant communication with him, and he's still reading, studying, reaching out to people across the country, and fighting against the system that enveloped him.
Sweet. What's the advantage of being a member of OBS, and how can they reach you?
So I think one of the advantages, well, there's several, but you're part of an organization that's been around for nearly 40 years, fighting for the rights and issues that affect Black people in the context of this larger world, and you actually learn how to fight effectively because we've been doing this a while, so we got some expertise on these folks, but also just being a part of a group that culturally, socially, and politically reinforce Black values and Black life, I think is really important, particularly in this day and age when white nationalism and white supremacy is, hitting us upside the head in many different forms, and sometimes it's actually physical form.
Yeah.
And so I think that kind of refuge is important right now for you to be fortified in a way that you can go back out and fight with a group that, knows how to fight.
How can they join?
So they can join by, there's a application online, so they can finish it online if they don't have access to the internet. Yeah. We can send them an application, or they can come to one of the meetings and fill it out. So this is very simple, but we do want people who ready to be committed and to be a part of the long-term fight.
367-5959 in Area 314. And the Organization for Black Struggle, that's www.obs/stl.org. Back with Jamala Rogers after this.
I want to ask you at this moment to please pray for our community. We need a prayer at this particular moment. So much hurt, so much pain, so much injustice. I see it on a daily basis. But God answers prayer. Pray for justice. Pray that the Holy Spirit will sweep across our community, and so many people, as they're God-fearing people, their hearts will be melted, and they'll reach out to these that Jesus refers to as the least of these. We'll see churches open their doors, and the Women in Need program coming forth. A church will open its doors, and we'll be able to take the women and the children that are suffering on the streets of our community to a particular church each night and bring them back. Pray that the doors of the 1411 Locust building will open soon, and the financial needs of the New Life Evangelistic Center during this very critical period will be met. Let's bind together in prayer. God answers prayer. Keep the faith and keep on praying for our community. Let's believe Him for miracles at this hour.
We'll be returning to our guests after this Black History Moment. Today's subject is medical scientist Patricia E. Bath, who was born November the 14th, 1942 in Harlem, New York. She wanted to graduate from Hunter College in New York City with a BS degree in chemistry in 1964, then attended Howard University Medical School. She graduated with honors in 1968 with her MD degree and also won the Edward J. Watson for Outstanding Student in Ophthalmology. From 1970 to 1973, Bath was the first African-American resident in ophthalmology at New York University School of Medicine. Then Bath moved to Los Angeles, California, where she became the first African-American woman surgeon at the UCLA Medical Center. In 1981, Bath conceived of her invention, the laser phaco probe, and she developed and tested a model for a laser instrument that could be tested to remove cataracts. Bath received a patent for her invention in 1988 and became the first African-American female doctor to receive a patent for a medical invention. Patricia Bath.
NLEC TV will continue to bring you wholesome family programming, plus many community shows that you only can see on NLEC TV. It's very important you bring it up on your iPhone, the NLEC TV app, or continue to watch it on 24.2. You'll be able to continue to see the Bernie Hayes Show, Zaki Baruti. You'll be able to see Transformation Church with Pastor Burris. In addition to that, you'll be able to see our Here's Help programs and news and views and so much more new and creative stuff that's going to be brought to you on NLEC TV. If you have questions on how to get that app on your iPhone or how to tune in 24.2, call now 314-436-2424. It's NLEC TV that's going to continue to bring you the best and wholesome community, family, entertainment, and renewable energy programming. So be sure you stay right there on NLEC TV. For further information, call 436-2424.
Welcome back. Jamala, I didn't greet you with this Kiswahili greeting, Habaragani.
Jay Mabarigani.
So you kind of embrace Kiswahili, you know?
Yeah, I mean, that's part of the 7 principles of self-determination, defining yourself and using your own language. So I'm not proficient in it, so don't start trying to do that.
Tell us what the Nguzo Saba means.
The Nguzo Saba 7 principles are the 7 principles of Kwanzaa that we believe should be practiced every year. So so we do self-determination, unity, Kaumba, which is creativity. And the one that I think is really important is Imani, which is, faith in your leaders, your teachers, and the righteousness of your struggle. Because I think if we don't do that, it's hard for us to go forward. So I embrace those as the Organization for Black Struggle does, and I think it really helps to center us when there's a lot of turmoil going on. You say, here are our values, here's what we believe for our community. And it helps you to get through the tough times.
And you're also fighting against the death penalty, and there's so many organizations that you're involved with, and it shows every year when you have your celebration, your anniversary, so many progressive groups attend.
Well,
and
there's
the Alliance.
Yeah, they're definitely our partners in these various struggles, whether it be around workers' rights, the death penalty, court reform, closing the workhouse down. All of those folks are our partners, and we're all in conjunction with each other. Sometimes we're all together, and sometimes there's a particular group that's taking the lead on an issue, and we're supportive of that. So I think we have a pretty strong progressive, movement that's trying to make things happen and trying to maintain the wins that we are fighting for.
Certainly. And also, we don't have too much time left, but the school board, the elected officials may be taking over the school board again. What's your take on that?
Well, I'm always for the people that got elected to do the job need to do the job. And so I was always fundamentally opposed to the takeover. And even though
the appointed board.
Yeah, the appointed board, because that's not what people voted for. And then I think it was hard for the elected board to find a role, and there was none defined by the appointed board.
Precisely,
so that was troubling, because if you say, well, you all need some help, and we're going to help you, but it's to help from behind and not like take over.
Right.
So, but yeah, our schools are, as far as I'm concerned, they're still in distress. I hear from teachers that are there and parents who got kids there that it's still in distress. And so one of the things I write about is how can a community be more involved in the school district, and I think about former retirees, including teachers, because I maintain that there needs to be more people in the classroom, based on the number of kids in the classroom, but also based on the number of issues that kids bring to school. That is something that one person standing in front, behind, or in the center of the classroom is hard.
Jamala Rogers, I can't tell you how much we appreciate you being back here again with us. And I want to thank each and every one of you for viewing us today also. And don't forget to support the New Life Evangelistic Center. We're 2428 Woodson Road in Overland, Missouri. Same services that were provided at 1411 Locust Street are provided here. But we need your help and support through Post Office Box 473, St. Louis, Missouri 63166, or online at www.newlifeevangelisticcenter.org. That's one word, newlifeevangelisticcenter.org. Jamala Rogers, thank you again for being with us, and thank you for supporting the New Life Evangelistic Center. I'm Bernie Hayes. Have a great day.